The next thing to look at, we're looking at input devices. We're looking at input and output devices this week. And the next thing to look at when looking at input devices is how do we get images into the computer? How do we get images into the computer? And while we could just take a picture and scan it on a flatbed scanner or something like that, a more common way to get images and movies into a computer is using a device like this, a camera. So we're going to look at cameras, video cameras, megapixels and resolution and the relationship between that. And we're also going to look at what it means to be full HD, high definition, and 1080p, 30 frames per second, that kind of a thing. So we're going to be looking at cameras, and then we'll also look at webcams, and I will share with you my thoughts on that and why I chose the camera I chose and how it has worked out for me. So, you know, digital cameras, this is what they look like. There's a whole bunch of them here, and they come in all flavors and varieties. And the most interesting thing about digital cameras is that it's a relatively recent phenomena. And, you know, we used to shoot photographs, we used to shoot pictures on film, and you probably know that. But it's just interesting to pause and reflect for a moment how different the world is now that we have digital cameras. Because with film, you always had to be like, okay, should I take a picture? Okay, there's the one picture. And you had to be a little bit careful because it cost you. You had to pay for the film, then you had to pay for the developing, and you didn't get to see the picture until, you know, sometimes a long time afterwards when you finally got the picture developed, and it'd be like, oh, that one didn't turn out so well. But with digital cameras, it's pretty amazing because you get to see the framing, and then as soon as you take the picture, you get to look at the picture. And there's no cost. There's no marginal cost associated with taking an extra picture. As economists would say, the marginal cost, the cost of doing one more unit is insignificant. It's zero. And so with digital cameras, we've really kind of gone crazy taking pictures, which is kind of cool because there's all kinds of interesting and cool pictures that are out there on the web. And if you go to Reddit, one of my favorite things to do at Reddit is just to look at, like, you know, the different images, you know, that people have taken. Yeah, and there's always some really interesting pictures up here. So I look for the imgur.coms and look at the different images. All right, I'm not sure what that one's about. But anyhow, and this is what digital video cameras look like. And there isn't necessarily a dividing line. So this camera right here will both do images and it will also do movies. All I have to do is flip the little switch. And with this camera right here, I've actually shot a ton of movies, and had the opportunity to travel some in 2010 to Southeast Asia, and I just shot so much footage. It was incredible. And the way I did that is I put a really large memory card in here, and so I was able just to shoot a lot of movies. So the line between a digital camera and a digital video camera is blurred because video cameras will also take still images, but it really depends upon how professional you want to get and how finished you want your final product to look like. I found that for everything I need to do, my little camera here will take great pictures and will also do really great video. And so it all comes down to zeros and ones again. And these cameras are storing zeros and ones when they take a picture. And you could go to Wikipedia and you can learn a little bit about, you know, how the digital cameras work and the history of them. Used to have really bad resolution and images right back in the day, but they've gotten much clearer now. And let's see, there used to be these closed coupler devices that would capture the images, CMOS. I believe that's what the CCD stands for. It's been a while since I've looked at that. The 3CCD, charged coupled devices. That's what it stands for. And yeah, so they've really kind of come a long ways. But basically, the light comes in and hits a little sensitive piece of technology inside the computer, and that sensitive technology can register, you know, what color the light is. So here we have a little bit of that going on, and it could store for each little dot of color. It could store what each of those little dots of color are. And so, you know, those little dots of color would be pixels. And back in the day, it used to be the CCCD thing. charged coupled device. Where did that go? I don't know. I don't know where I clicked that. Anyhow, it's not so much important exactly how these guys work, other than, you know, how do you find the right one? And so how I find cameras that I'm interested in is I read reviews. So just search Google for digital camera reviews, and you can get things like this, and it'll tell you what, like, you know, CNET, again, publisher of a lot of computer articles and magazines. Here they have reviews on different cameras, and so you can read those. And I've always been kind of partial to Canon, though I know Nikon has a really good reputation too. And I would stay away from Samsung and Sony, just my personal preference. But Canon for me is sort of like, I've been so happy with this Canon camera, it's hard for me to go elsewhere. And you can do that, of course, digital camera reviews also, for not just camera reviews, but also digital video camera reviews. Canon also has a nice website where you can check out the different cameras they have. If I was shopping for a camera, I would probably buy exactly what I have now, but just a little bit more modern and updated. And so here's this camera, right, for $200, and that's pretty much what I have right here. And you know, it could shoot 12.1 megapixels. We'll learn what that means in a second. And it also shoots full HD 1920 by 1080 at 30 frames per second for up to 14 minutes, which I really like that. And it's kind of interesting that this camera here, which is 12.1 megapixels, has that capability, whereas this one, which is 16 megapixels, can only do, right here, full HD 1080p at 24 frames per second versus 30 frames per second. So what exactly does all of that mean? So to understand the resolution of a camera, it's basically how many pixels wide by how many pixels high, right? So the resolution of the camera is how many pixels wide by how many pixels high. And so here's an image of that. And you know, so here we have like 3,000. Let's go with this one. 4,520 pixels wide by 2,540 pixels high. And when you multiply those two numbers together, how many pixels do you have in total? You have 11.5 million pixels, or 11.5 megapixels. So that's where megapixels comes from. We take the resolution width and the resolution height, and we multiply it together, and it gives us the total number of pixels in the image, and that's the number of megapixels. So why would you want a lot of megapixels for your camera? Because the more megapixels you have, the larger the image you'll be able to shoot. And you can kind of see that here. So here are lower megapixels, and these are smaller images, and here are bigger megapixels, and these are bigger images. And so even if this framing right here was framing in the same thing that this framing was framing in right here, you're going to have a lot more detail in the larger image. It's going to be a lot clearer, and you're also going to be able to zoom in and maintain the clarity, as opposed to if you're shooting a lower megapixel thing. So, but the larger your megapixel, the more data you are storing, and so that's the trade-off. The higher the quality, the more data. The lower the quality, the less data. But that's how you get megapixels. It's the resolution, width times height, and you multiply those two together, and you get the total number of pixels, and that's your megapixels. So this would be like 3.2 megapixels. 3.2 megapixels. And a pixel, once again, it stands for a picture element. So pixel stands for picture element. And each picture element is just one little dot of color in the whole screen, so that you know, all those dots of color make up the image. So if I was to right-click my desktop and choose screen resolution, it tells me 1920 by 1080. And so I have 1,920 pixels, little dots of color, little dots going left to right, and I have 1,080 dots of color going top to bottom. So I have all of those dots, right? There's that many dots, or pixels, picture elements, on my screen. If I multiply 1920 by 1080 together, and to do that I could go to Google, 1920 by 1080, I get you know, about 2 million pixels, 2,100,000 pixels, right about there. And so this would be like a 2.1 megapixel. If this was a camera shooting this resolution, it'd be about 2.1 megapixels. So that's kind of like a screen resolution in pixels and megapixels in cameras. We don't use the phrase megapixel to refer to screens for whatever reason, only to cameras. What else do we have to say here? So what is high definition? So when you see HD, right, like you know, on these cameras we saw full HD, and it tells us 1920 by 1080 is full HD. And then we have, I'm just looking, here's VGA, which is 640 by 480, so that's like old classic television. And then here is just regular HD, not full HD, which is 1280 by 720. So it's smaller. So HD, where did HD go? HD, high definition, when it's full HD, it refers to 1920 by 1080. And when it's just HD, it's 1280 by 720. Now, another important thing, which is good to pay attention to, is how many frames per second. How many frames per second, right? So full HD would be 1080 by 1080 by, what did I just say? 1080 by 1920 by 1080, right? And then it would also be 30 frames per second. So if you saw 1080 divided by 30p, that means it's 1920 by 1080. Right there, I had to answer. And it's 30 frames per second. So that's full HD, which is cool. And you can look up, you know, 1080p on Wikipedia, you know, to read a little bit more about full HD, often marketed as full HD. And so what is that full HD? 1920 by 1080 would be capturing pretty much 2.1 megapixels, or 2,073,600 pixels with you know, with each frame. So that's doing that 30 times a second. So it's capturing 2 million pixels of data 30 times a second. And for each pixel, I might have a bit depth of 24 bits. So for each pixel, I might have you know, 49 million zeros and ones for each frame, 49 million zeros and ones for each frame. And for each second, 30 frames a second, I'd be capturing, you know, this many 1.5 billion zeros and ones every second. That doesn't seem quite right. That's because they have compression software to reduce the number of zeros and ones. But I'm rambling. All right. So what else can I share with you about it? Here's a nice little image of VGA versus 720p HD versus full HD. So you could kind of see the difference between 640 by 480, 1280 by 720, 1920 by 1080. And you could see the same image is pretty much captured, but you could see the size, right? To maintain the same clarity, this has got to be a lot smaller, and this one could be a lot bigger. So the last thing to say about getting images into camera is that there are webcams. And the webcam that I use to record these videos is actually right there. Can you see it? There we go. That's the webcam I use to record these videos. And it's a full HD 1080p webcam. And yeah, how much does that cost? Let's find out. $65, $83. I paid about $100, so the price has come down. Something else that's interesting is that a lot of computers come with cameras built into them. So this Mac right there, that would be the webcam built right into it. And one thing that has happened a couple of times, viruses that allow people to watch you through your camera, is that there have been some viruses, you know, where people have been able to turn your cameras on without you knowing it. Cyber spies use phone computer cameras to watch victims, you know, so it's kind of an interesting thing to know about. If you have a camera hooked up to your computer and you get the wrong virus, somebody might be watching you. What they want to see, I do not know. I do not know. You know, probably nothing that would be interesting to them in my office. All right, so that's a little bit about digital video cameras. And the last thing I'll point out here is on my camera here, if I pull down the bottom and open it, then I have my battery right there, which comes in and out. And so I think I have an extra battery. I don't know where it is, but I think I bought a extra battery, and I had this. Pretty sure I did. Yes, I did. And then I could have like two. So while one's charging, I could have one in there that's live. And then also inside here is my SD card, which is this little card right there. And this is a 32 gigabyte SD card, and this is a memory card using flash technology. And it just pops in, slides out, pops in. Should be relatively easily. There we go, and then clicks into place. So with a 32 gigabyte card, if I turn my camera on and I go to video, I could shoot 170 minutes and 17 seconds of video. 170 minutes and 17 seconds of video, which is pretty amazing. And so when you get a digital video camera, or a digital camera and a digital video camera, something you could also shoot video, it's a good idea to get a big memory card. So most cameras will take SD memory cards. Some of the bigger cameras will take a little bit of a larger memory card. Sometimes you'll see them there that form, but SD is one of the most popular ones. And like you could get a 64 gigabyte. Well, let's go here. 64 gigabyte SD card, $55, or 64 gigabyte, $50. 16 gigabyte 2-pack, $38. So I've got 32 gigabyte here, which now is going for $25, $26. So it's good to have a nice memory card in there. So digital video cameras. If I was to buy one, this would be the one I'd get right now. Right there for 200 bucks. Great deal. It's 12.1 megapixels, which is going to be plenty. And you know, the thing I really like about it is that it will shoot full HD for 30 frames per second for 14 minutes. And that's really cool. That's something I'd want. So I think, no, you can't just click on that to see what the video looks like, but it'd be plenty fine, plenty fine. All right, that's what I have to say about digital video cameras.